Welcome to Imagine an Apple with myself, Francis, and Vin. Today we're going to talk to Jess about the inner experience of meditation, what it is like to meditate from the inside. Jess actually is effectively the person who introduced Vin and I to each other and hence led to this podcast even existing,
That's true. That's
which
true.
is nice.
Well, you opted yourselves in to an event, so it's very much on the participants as well, I would say. So what are we talking about?
We'll be talking about your experiences, long story short, and how you feel meditation from the inside of your head. What is it like?
Yeah, because it's common for us on Twitter to be really into our like internal phenomenology, isn't it? Because one of the things that does the rounds, I think, in all friendship groups is like, oh, like how do you see red, or like you have a voice in your head, or do you see in pictures, or yeah. So I suppose meditation is actually it's a journey of exploring that space where like that's almost it's your main focus. It's like what is happening in your experience. And unfortunately, if you meditate a lot, you start like not liking words like inside or in your mind or things like this, because I would say the boundaries become more and more blurry until they're sort of non-existent. But I
Mhm.
think that there are certain things we can agree are sort of private.
Cool.
But I've actually met people who, like, in theory, could like even go into places we think normally are private. But normally, our internal world is private, isn't it? And inside our bodies is normally relatively private too. Like, you can't sense inside somebody else's body. Where shall I
What's,
start?
what's your background as how you got into meditation and just your level of how much you've done? It might be just a
Yeah,
good.
great question. Yeah, well, I guess like many meditators, my background is like intolerable suffering. And like I think that this is common also is a sort of sense of really wanting to get to something that you could call like the truth. So really like valuing something that you might call truth, and also for me it was very much about freedom. I feel like my younger life was very constricted by sort of lacks of various freedoms, and so my journey has been like trying to reach ordinary everyday freedom, like freedom from having to work a job you don't like, for example, as well as the sort of more Buddhist sense of freedom, like because sometimes awakening is called like liberation, which is also the Latin word for freedom. So I went through every other avenue of freedom I could possibly do before before I went to some sort of like internal meditation-y type freedom, um, which is hilarious. And it also took a sort of chance synchronous meeting with a very like interesting person for me to actually be kind of forced into finally exploring like internal freedom or mental freedom. Um, so at first, so a lot of my background, I'm 40, and a lot of my background before this was, I guess, a sort of a general progression through various other like developmental stages, I suppose. So at first, it's like freedom to like be in a friendship group that I wanted or find a tribe. So I was very into LGBT stuff. And then a lot of that comes with like ideological questions as well. And I went through a process of like really integrating with an ideology. Mine happened to be like wokey type, well, social justice as it was called then,
Mhm.
and like very intertwined with academic learning as well. So I did a whole bunch of that, but also came to the limits of that. And I think that's what promotes growth, is that if you find something that seems to work, you kind of fully explore it. But once you start hitting the boundaries of where that can take you, you then sort of break out into a new one. So I definitely went through philosophy for quite a long time, and then eventually kind of saw the edges of that. So it got all the way through to kind of yeah the Buddhist side, which I really didn't want to go to religion particularly because I was raised in a very strict very kind of life-denying Christian religion, which was the Jehovah's Witnesses. And so the idea of going anywhere near religion was very anathema for a long time. But I finally did. And I would say the turn, which was quite an explosive turn for me in my life at the time, was about 4 years ago now. In fact, the anniversary is in October for me. So we went past the 4 year anniversary of me really switching when we were having our talk, actually, Francis, last October, because it was in 2020, October 2020, that this all kicked off. And it was right as coronavirus was really settling into its first winter, and so I had a lot of time to kind of be by myself in a small room with nothing else to do except explore like the inside of my like personal experience. So I didn't meditate in the first year. I was quite resistant, or I did off and on, but I was quite resistant to it for a while. So I would say I've been like really regularly practicing for three years, maybe 3.5 years at this point. And practice for me, well, like I say, in the first year I did a lot of body scanning, which I think is actually super important as well. And I went through quite a few breakthroughs there where I was
That's what's called
noticing.
Vipassana, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it is a Vipassana practice. Yeah, I didn't know that at the time. I was just kind of getting a bit high and like reconnecting with my physical body,
Mm-hmm.
which was super important because I'd actually had a bad connection to it in the past because I had anxiety. And so I had panic attacks. And so you quite quickly discover that there are like mental triggers to panic attacks, but there's also physical triggers. So I had very bad digestive problems and like the physical could trigger it just as bad as the mental could, and you start to see that that's a cycle actually. So doing body scanning was me not being frightened of my internal bodily feelings actually, and then yeah, the daily practice after that was it's pretty much daily. Like I managed to do like one sit a day probably, and then I've only done one or two retreats, like one or two online, and then I've done one in person 7 day silent retreat. And I've actually just come off of retreat, but I was helping to organize it. So I did actually do 3 hours of sitting a day, though, even though I was also dealing with all the practical aspects of a retreat. So I was looking after everyone's food, I was looking after all of those things that you want to not have to look after while you yourself are meditating. So I had to like, make sure everyone went to bed and then they got up and then they had food and then the driveway was clean and that kind of thing. But still, 3 hours a day kind of put me back into this quite intense place about 2 weeks ago. But generally, I would say it's at least a 25-minute sit every day. But gradually, as a meditator, you realize that you can meditate anytime, right? So those small moments of time when you're normally looking at your phone, like when you're commuting or waiting for the bus or walking somewhere or wherever else. So you end up trying to drop into that kind of aware, more aware space at any time you remember. And in fact, talking about meditation can be one of those times. So I do remember our conversation, Francis, was quite psychedelic because the more I talked about my internal experience, the more I was like tapping into my internal experience.
Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of want to ask what you experienced when you're body scanning, actually. Like how when you say body scanning,
Yeah.
what's it like to you?
Yeah. Okay. So generally, because you're trying to sort of sense out something that you basically can't see, like to me, the visual screen, if you like, which is a nice phrase for when you have your eyes closed, but you're not necessarily, you haven't gone to sleep, like so. But generally, that visual screen is kind of dark, but it's available for the mind to like hijack. So it's generally a dark space in terms of visual screen, but the mind can sort of propose imagery that appears and disappears while you're feeling into the body. But what happens with the body? Well, I actually did this years ago with period pain, weirdly enough. So I've already got experience of that. So I was like really feeling into like what does a pain feel like how much detail can you discover. So with period pain, I was focusing on something very, very specific and trying to feel what it was like. And I actually ended up conjecturing a little bit about like what might be physically happening with what you sort of know from medical stuff about what might be going on. So I had this sense actually that maybe things move around a bit when you're on your period. So, and that's actually true. It turns out I didn't. I found this out later, but when I was doing the main sessions, what does it feel like? So scanning does imply that you start in one place and then you graduate further and further down. You either start like maybe at the head and feel the muscles, and the face, and in fact you try to sort of relax them, and that can involve also like noticing your breathing. So if you focus on slowing your breathing down a little bit, you can kind of relax a bit more and so get more clarity on it. So generally you would graduate down the body, but I think I wasn't that strict. So what I would try to do is just be like, well, when I'm lying down and I'm very relaxed and my eyes are closed, like what is like present for me if I focus on the physical aspects of the body. And so quite often there's one or two sensations that catch your attention in a broader sort of empty field, because when the body's like very relaxed, like there's not a lot of things pinging off, I suppose. So whatever would catch my attention, I would try to notice. So sometimes it's that, one leg is more squashed than the other leg because you've got your ankles crossed, let's say. So you'd be like, okay, I can sense that there's like a bloom of sensation, and that obviously that feels like a certain way, and so you might think, is that a nerve thing? Is it a muscle thing? Is something compressed? Is it expanding? Like along those lines. And what tends to happen for me is that a visual image will also sort of like appear on the visual screen or in the mind's eye. And so you're kind of like, because you have a sense of your own body map. But what's interesting is you can make the body map just go wild and disappear as well. Because you normally think, well, I am in my head, or many people think that they're in their head behind their eyes, but not everyone. So if it's your leg, you get this feeling of like, oh, it's over there, or it's down there, or it's like lower than where my sense of self is. So you have this like relational aspect almost immediately. So if you've got a leg that's under tension because it's being squashed by the other leg, that can feel like, oh, it's down there. But what's interesting is that if you have a blank black visual field body map, it might look like a sort of light or a sort of, I don't know, like uh yeah, I would guess, or maybe like little fiber optics. Fiber optic toys, they can have little strands and they all have little points of light at the end. So there might be like what I call a bloom, or almost like in the sea when you have those algae that go phosphorescent. So there'll be a tiny bloom in the visual space, and sometimes it maps to where your leg is, and sometimes it's just hanging there in empty space, and the spatial component is actually quite
And
irrelevant.
does it look a bit like the shape of the feeling you're getting, like where the two legs are crossing or whatever? Or is it.
Yes, yeah, and I think what's quite interesting though is that you only have access to like certain points. So maybe there's the point where the leg is touching the other leg because you've got a crossed ankle. So that is a point or a little like fuzz of light. But the compression might be happening all the way along the muscle, let's say. So the muscle itself is longer and thinner and it's moving out from that point of compression. And so they're kind of related. But what's interesting is when you focus your attention, that might become your entire world for a moment. So actually, kind of your sense of who you are or what you are is entirely just the sensation. So that can take up the whole sort of like attentional field. And so it becomes very, very big. And weirdly enough, the person that helped to spark this interest talked a little bit about how, like, when you focus in, it can become your whole world. So if you get overwhelmed, you might want to just focus back out and just try to take in the whole body, try to take in the whole room. And so you can get away from overwhelm by realizing that actually that's actually a very small part of your awareness. And there are, in fact, much larger parts of your awareness that are available to you if you then zoom back out again in terms of your attention. So that itself is a learning, right? Is like, oh, like I can, if I focus in, it's almost like my entire attentional field is completely filled by this one very small sensation that's in my ankle, or it can feel like a very, very small sensation far away because this other sensation, like let's say a breeze on your face, is a much more wispy, much larger, much more broad sensation, and then the two have a relational context, but they can be right next to each other in your awareness rather than having this like
Yeah.
big gap. So the fact that that is very fungible is an interesting thing to explore, even just by itself.
So it
Yeah.
sounds like you're partly just directly paying attention to the sensing, but you're also seeing imagery related to it, and you're thinking conceptually about it as well. You're thinking about the
Yes.
muscle and things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when the
Yeah.
wind blows on
Those.
your face, do those all come in as well in a different form?
It does, yeah. I actually, my mind is very powerful, so it kind of comes in whether I want it to or not. The both the visual overlay to try and sort of sense make about what you're paying attention to, and then also, yeah, a conceptual overlay can also come in and sort of helpfully or unhelpfully be like, oh, that's the X muscle, or that's the trapezius, or you get a little flash of like an anatomy textbook or something, and kind of locate what that must be if you're on a picture of anatomy or something like that. But those come and go pretty fast, I would say, and you'll keep trying to redirect your attention back to the physical, but these little visual overlays kind of like pop in and out, yeah, without agency.
I've learned a lot already because I spent 10 days
Right.
once doing silent meditation in India, like a, a Vipassana type thing, and I don't have an imagination. But also, I thought part of the point was not to be doing anything except the sensory perception.
Right.
So other even conceptual thinking, I would be like not suppressing, but letting not be there and letting my attention just be on the sensations,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
kind of quite very different, but kind of boring in a different way as well, and
Yeah.
not really engaging the mind in the way you are, which is really interesting. It's very different.
Yeah, and I think I've seen it as a problem in the past, and then I've tried to let it be like not a problem. It's just sort of there. Um, but yeah, it's I think like being able to direct your attention is one of the things you're practicing in meditation. Is like, can you just choose a thing and like go back to it rather than be constantly distracted by other aspects of your experience? So yeah, can you have like a meta view so that some part of you at least continues to redirect experience when it gets distracted into other parts that are not the focus of the attention for that sit? Yeah, but it's difficult.
Yeah. Then
So you said that your mind throws visual imagery at you without your volition. Um, can
Yes.
you like describe what that feels like when something does it come at you without any prompting on your part, or is it just feel like it's partly you and partly you have no control of it?
Yeah, I think basically it's a habit,
Okay.
which might take an entire lifetime to break. So in some sense, it's me, but I think it's more a habitual kind of subroutine that got laid down when I was very, very, very young, and it's been
Mm,
perpetually on the whole time, and that's what my system thinks I'm like requesting. So like whenever I'm doing anything, I think the mind is like, oh, me, me, like so it does feel very unbidden, like very, very unbidden.
mm,
But can appear and disappear. So I think another thing that meditation sort of trains is like being able to catch very short sensations. And so I think a lot of these,
mm.
it does feel like my entire attention just gets hijacked. So I switch from the body field to the visual screen, and this like television screen, if you like, flashes a sort of fairly detailed, blaring image of a picture of some kind, and then it disappears again, and then it might be replaced by another and another and another, but not always. And so it kind of flashes in, but it's gone again. So you can basically
Yeah.
ignore it in a way because it's so fast
Mhm.
that I think maybe a non-meditator wouldn't even know it's happening. Actually, you wouldn't even be able to spot it. But I've done a lot of contemplative practice that isn't meditating. So I was a life model for a long time. So you have to sit perfectly still and keep your eyes perfectly still. And I did that for over a year. So you've got 45 minutes of staring at the floor, listening to people drawing you, and you're not allowed to move your eyes. So I did a lot of that. And I've also done a lot of just staring at the visual screen while I was high actually, but like you can kind of get like speckles or in your physical vision, I would say, like it's your
Mm.
eyes being like, oh, like we're awake, but but there's no like content. So it kind of, the top-down processing, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. It's sort of flashing little lights and stuff, being like, wait, are there colors?
Yeah.
Is there a shape here? And you can actually watch those and encourage those, and I recommend that. And in fact, sleep deprivation and drugs and various other things can make those more coherent and
Mm.
more like bright and patterned. So that's fun.
That's
But
good.
sometimes it's what I call the conceptual mind, which is it hijacks the visual field, but it's not your actual eyes.
Yeah.
It's somehow it's the mind is just sort of presenting an image to you. I think it's sense making. Yeah.
Yeah. So this leads me to my next question, which is,
Okay.
does your body scanning gradually like evolve into mental scanning?
Ooh, when I'm body scanning, no, I do try to bring it back to the body over and
Mm.
over.
Okay.
Um, but I can't stop that visual screen from just popping in. So I'll have some imagery of some kind, like almost all the time. It's just, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's always popping in. So maybe I'll get a minute of, especially if something new happens, maybe like, so yeah, like I was focusing on my ankle being squashed. So then a breath of air goes across the face, and I'll have like, sometimes I have a visual image of my own face from the outside pop in, and it will like be the correct side in terms of where I felt the breeze. And also, what another thing I noticed was it will have a very certain angle from which I am seeing this like image of my own face, which is
Oh,
normally inaccurate.
okay.
But it's broadly accurate, but sometimes it has the wrong hairdo. Sometimes, you know, the actual external things that I can't feel are like obviously in the wrong place.
Mm.
But yeah, so that's a good example of another visual thing that comes in, is like what I would look like if an observer was looking at me,
Interesting.
which is interesting, or just the side of my face. And quite often, yeah, very often it used to be this side on the right hand side, and really recently, as actually like sometimes the left hand side comes in, which I sort of take to be a hemisphere thing actually. So the right hemisphere is the left hand side of the face, and the left hemisphere I think is mapped in most people's brains to the right hand side of the face. And I was a very left hemisphere person, so I'm actually very happy that the image of the right hand side of my face, and like the viewer is like sort of here,
Mm.
down here. That's actually started coming in more, which I think is actually a fruition of practice, which is awesome. Where like the right hemisphere is allowed a look in sometimes.
So it sounds like you have a very visual imagination. So in a way, you're quite phantasic, if you're like familiar with that term.
I am familiar, and yes, I am, except I've actually improved it over my lifetime.
So
So
hyperphantasic.
yeah, well, I never really, I didn't used to be. And it started
Mm.
happening, I think, with a fine art degree, a visual arts degree. I noticed it with coding, where I would end up with this, but coding is extremely abstract, so I'd end up with this like blank visual field, and there's more of a feeling to it when it comes to coding, which is
Mm.
interesting. But I think I've improved it over time, basically with practice. I think a lot of my memories are visual as well. Like I'm able to conjure visual memories quite easily now. But like I say, I do think the years of focus on
Mm.
visual phenomena, and after I did my fine art degree, I was a photographer for a while. I think it actually strengthened it.
Does it come with audio
So
in the background? Like, so it becomes like a video and instead of just like visuals only?
no, okay, so this is a great question. So not necessarily, but
No?
I have an extremely strong inner monologue, like extremely, like it's pathological. So the audio that I hear is typically a voice that is my own voice,
Mm.
and sometimes it's singing a song, like you've got a song stuck in your head, in which case it's a fairly fidelitous version of the song. So it's like I'm listening to the song even though I can't hear it. So that must be playing from memory in some way. I'm
So
very
sorry,
keyed
so that
into
has the
lyrics.
instruments of someone playing it, or it just has you singing it?
Yep, it has the instruments. Yep. And it has them singing it, not me. So like the voice of the singer, if I've heard the song many times, it'll be like their voice. And oh yeah, and when I'm reading novels, I actually, okay, this is one of the first things probably I ever noticed. When I was 18, I read American Psycho, and that has an extremely strong character's narration voice. And of course, that character is a sociopath and is possibly insane. So I noticed that after reading the book for an hour or something, my inner monologue would switch to Patrick Bateman's style of inner monologue. And I was like, oh my God, like, art can get inside your head, basically, was the revelation that I had there. And it would take a little while for it to disperse, like probably half an hour to an hour before
Mm.
a more neutral kind of inner monologue would come back.
So that kind of like reminds me of another interview we did with someone who can't watch horror shows or scary movies
Uh-huh.
because it's too overwhelming, and it's because like their imagination just goes wild. And I wonder if you experience this. Is this something like, oh, this is like too overwhelming? Art really gets inside of me, and that's why I can't read any details that are like too graphic or watch movies that are too much.
Yeah. There was a time in before my early 20s when I would just watch anything and it was kind of
Hmm.
fine. Like somehow I just had this extremely robust, oh, well, that's not real and I'm me and that's fine. But yeah, in my mid 20s, I actually developed the like anxiety disorder.
Mm.
So uh, again, probably facilitated by drugs. But I think I just came across this like concept that like my inner world, which I hadn't even looked at in the past or hadn't questioned, I suddenly realized it would end, that I would die. So the form that my anxiety took was death anxiety.
Mm.
So after that, I became extremely sensitive to horror movies. Mainly because of the content, because of it bringing up these topics, which I wanted to try to avoid in order to not have a panic attack. And then for a while, I was kind of numbed out, and so could watch these like movies, but the violence was so bad. I actually watched No Country for Old Men, the Coen brothers movie, which is
Yeah.
about a serial killer. And oh man, I watched it and like was half dissociated and half like really feeling it, and just in this very strange place where I was like enduring the film. But in general, I've struggled with low affect emotionally. So in general, I love movies because I like to have my emotions sort of incited. I like to be carried away by characters and a story, and I like to experience emotions or emotional reactions to contexts that I haven't had before. And yeah, I was pretty low affect as a child, so one of the things I really liked is like families, for example. Like, how do they interact with each other? Like, what does love feel like in a family? Or how, like, what does a noisy family feel like? Because mine was very quiet, and I was, yeah, I very much enjoy like romance movies, feelings of love, like stuff like that. Yeah.
But by low affect, you mean you don't experience emotion often, or
Yes, yeah, I felt very numbed out in my teenage years and my whole 20s as well, actually. And I actively worked on it for my entire 20s to try and bring it back. But yeah, like I
Mm.
didn't know what I liked, I didn't know what I wanted. Um, yeah,
Mm.
there was very low variance on, except for, well, I had relatively sad feelings, but they were mostly numbed and suppressed. So I would say I was depressed, and the highs were very blunted. Like there weren't many highs, or like a high would come in, but then it would be overwhelming. And so I think I shut down from that too. And so trying to like get the a sense of aliveness back was a project of my 20s for sure.
And, and did you
Yeah.
succeed?
Yes. Yeah, and it's still an ongoing project. I think one of the ways you can tell is like if you have your inhibitions lowered by something, like I think alcohol is a classic one, then how do you behave? Like are you different or are you the same? And so the difference between just normal you and drunk you can sort of show like are there still emotions that are repressed in your
Mm.
day-to-day life or something?
Right.
And yeah, luckily I'm a happy drunk. So it's actually quite happy feelings that are inhibited. So having like disinhibiting substances can
Mm.
sort of show you what can come out of you when you're in less control. I think I was very clamped down and very in control, which was encouraged by both my family and the religion, of course. So I was only being a good girl when I was all clamped down.
Mm.
Did that paying more attention to emotion, was there a phenomenological thing in terms of how you feel emotion? Because there's different ways of experiencing emotion.
Y-
Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
in retrospect, I would say I only felt my emotions conceptually, um, which is kind of sad because, I would profess boundless love to my boyfriend and things like this, but I think it was on more of a conceptual level, and it's only in my very late 30s that someone kind of pointed out that like emotions can be felt in the body. And
Mm,
I did feel emotions in the body, most notably fear. That's very obviously like bodily sensations, and it goes in, like, fear can be in a number of places, but I think the stomach is a classic one. So you can have butterflies if you have positive anxiety. You can feel sick to your stomach if, for example, let's say you've forgotten an extremely important appointment, and your heart, like people say your heart sinks, but I think your stomach sinks, like, or your intestines sink, or they flip over. So I felt all of those, but the idea that a positive emotion would be in the heart was quite a radical thing, and
mm,
that was really only barely unlocked in my very, very late 30s. But you start realizing that greetings card type euphemisms are not metaphors. You start realizing that they're literal. So my heart went out to them, or, my heart jumped. Like, those are physical feelings in the heart space, and that they might live there somehow, or be located there. So I had a lot of negative emotions, some of which I think were quite conceptual, but
do you get imagery at all for emotions?
yeah, that's a good question.
yeah, much less so. Yeah, no, I would say they're embodied, or they're translated into practical things. So, like, I think I loved my boyfriend because he was into the same things as me. So it would be like keyed to, oh, I love you're so literary. Like, we both read books. I love that you read books. I love you. But it's all just based in the head. It's all based on, oh, well, we have the same interests. We are, and I would think that we're the same person, which is interesting. Like, again, when you look back, you're like, wow, how did I how did I think that way? But yeah, so I think it is quite embodied or conceptual, but not like visual, which is interesting.
So, how has meditation affected your experience of like emotions, but everything else in more generally?
Yeah, well, yeah, like I say, I'd already done an awful lot of sort of contemplation, but I think you could probably call it mind-based contemplation.
Hmm.
Um, and that has only expanded, which is cool. So, but there's a lot of talk in the meditation community that you might want to like awaken all aspects of you, and so some people point out other aspects that you could actually work on. So the heart space, which kind of implies emotions. Some teachers talk about the gut and gut instinct, gut feeling, which you might call, let's say, the body. And one teacher I know also has a grouping called the soul, which is kind of, it encompasses the imaginal, but it also encompasses, like, I would say almost like spiritual cravings or life journey cravings, which somehow feel meaningful on some deep, more murky level that's not just directly related to, have I eaten enough? Do I have friends? Am I slept well enough? Am I safe? But yeah, the changes for me, well, I think one of the things is spaciousness definitely feels increased. Um, So what the mind can, well, maybe perceive itself to be, but maybe also like the size of the mind. And now this is where the boundaries become really strange. And so dissolving boundaries is one of the really fun things. So
Right.
I think in our talk, Francis, I was in a very like spacious place, like empty place. Um, and I think it's because of transferring your sense of identity from the mind, whether that's voice based in a monologue or whether that's visual screen imagery or conceptual understanding, is like, if you cease to identify with that and think that that is you,
Mm-hmm.
and that is kind of only you, you kind of get more space in terms of like, well, there's much more in my awareness if I choose to kind of expand my field of what I'm paying attention to. And so, like, one of the huge things that happened for me on retreat actually 2 years ago was really encompassing the back half of my body,
Mm-hmm.
like into my conscious awareness. And so that led to a strange fishbowl type feeling where it's like, oh, like the way I described it was my awareness isn't sort of trapped inside of the body, inside the head. My awareness is actually huge, or sensory awareness, and the body, both the back and the front, is inside of this larger space. And so it felt fishbowly because it's like, oh, there's this back part of the world which I can directly sense through the literally my skin, and also you can conceptually fill in what's behind you in the room and stuff like that. That's a little bit more fuzzy, of course, but anyway, you get access. I got access to like at least 2 meters behind my body, which is weird because then it puts your sense of self much further forward in your assumption of what your awareness is, because you were thinking that your awareness starts at the face and everything else is in front of the face, but actually there's this sort of like realm that's behind you that is also inside your awareness. So that led to a sort of enlarging of my sense of um, what my mind is capable of like perceiving in terms of sense perception. And on the other hand, in the mind, I call it koaning yourself, which this is
Koaning.
when, yeah, if you manage to make up a good koan to make your mind be a little
Koaning.
bit confounded for a second, yeah, and the mind sort of has no immediate answer, you can kind of experience the inner monologue actually turning off,
Uh-huh.
and the visual assaults that I get all the time as well, they might go quiet. And so suddenly the mind being this large, empty, cavernous realm, which is available for use but not currently filled, um, was also a huge revelation for me. And this was only last year at the end of an intensive period of a year of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So with that one, the koan that I used, it might be interesting. The koan that I used was
Go on.
where are, and where is excellent because where is something you can't really answer. Where are all the memories from all of my entire life that I've obviously got access to generally, but not, but where are they right now, like in this moment? And if you try and go looking for every memory you've ever had, like
Yeah.
my mind at least is like, oh, like what? It just stops. It's like it doesn't even know where to look. And then after about a minute or two, I mean, the first time this happened to me, it was probably about 3 minutes long, which is an ocean of time compared to usual.
Yeah.
Um, what actually happened was a random memory from some random time in my life just appeared on the visual screen, and it was as if the mind was like, "Do you want this one?" And then I'm a meditator, so I managed to just let that pass. And then like another memory surfaced, and it was as if the mind was like, what about this one? Like you're asking for memories. So it offered one at a time, but it couldn't
Uh-huh.
answer this question of like, where are they all
Mm-hmm.
right now? Because where they all are right now is somewhere kind of inaccessible to like the RAM, if you like, of
Mm-hmm.
your
Yes.
working awake aware memory.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me actually to actually be able to experience my mind, which merges with awareness a lot. So like the mind body as like mostly empty, because if you just sit in a quiet room, the physical space is not bringing anything to you. There's not much sound either, so you can suddenly see that there's actually not a lot in the present moment. There's not a lot going on, like if the mind has confounded itself and shuts up for a minute. So I think a sense of expansion is really big for me. But there's a whole bunch of other things too. Yeah, like metacognition, I suppose, is one, like being
Yeah.
aware of what's happening as it's happening. But speed, sensory speed is one which, the Daniel Ingram school also talks about, is like how many noticings per second can you actually like experience
Mm.
in the moment. They call it noticings per second because he really tries to point out that like you can probably be aware of like, 5, 10, 20 sensations per second. Um, and I think that taking that as a goal is quite interesting. It's like, how could you even get to that stage? And it's like, well, you'd have to be aware, you'd have to be present, you'd have to be super fast, you'd have to not hold on to any one sensation and start talking about it in your head. You'd have to like ditch all of that in order to get
Is,
more in to
is
the,
that
to the
aware of each one in sequence or simultaneously?
Well, I believe that's something that Daniel actually encourages is like, can it be in sequence or is it simultaneously? And his assertion is that actually it has to be in sequence. We are actually only single threaded. Um, this is in sequence. Yeah, so 20 in sequence, one after another after
And you
another.
can do that.
No, like 20 per second is insane to me, really. But like there are some people who really go hard on this and it makes them wake up, like it makes them able to directly see almost the workings of the mind. And I think what it actually shows is the flaws or the fudges of the mind. And so I think because you can see the inner workings more, you stop believing in it as much, or you stop investing your sense of self into it. And that's what helps you to awaken is that this thing that was constantly going on that you thought was continuous, that you thought was you, that you thought was unchangeable or whatever, is actually just like a mess.
So you've had that experience from some of the metacognition stuff, then, have you? Or
So me personally, ye- I'm gonna say yes.
I'm going to
Yeah,
ask you for an example of that
yeah.
kind of thing.
I might actually have to go all the way to like literally what I've been doing in the last 2 days. So I've been trying to do what many practitioners would say is either the first awakening or it's even a preliminary. In some very strict traditions, it's only a preliminary that doesn't even get mentioned. But it's the first move, and it's the move that Eckhart Tolle did by accident, and he talks about it in The Power of Now, which is to rather than be what they call mind identified, so you think that you are your thoughts, you realize that there is a version of being present and aware that isn't your thoughts. And he did it by accident because he said, I'm sick to death of myself. And suddenly he realized, hang on a minute, how can I be sick of myself? How can there be two of us in here? And so I think he more or less was like, oh, one of them is fake. And so he ended up having a weird psychedelic experience all night in his bed, passed out from the exhaustion of the whole thing, and woke up like enlightened. And I think many people would say, well, that's first enlightenment. But anyway, that's what he talks about in The Power of Now is like be with the part of your experience that is not the monologue, is not the imagery. It is and it can only live in the present, like it's only there, it's not anywhere else. Um, and it's not saying anything. It's more or less only awareness. Like it's not the part that takes a half second and then makes a comment. It's the part that experiences in real time, I suppose.
Mm.
So that's why it's called the power of now. And people call that different things. They call it resting as awareness. And one of the big shifts for meditators is they stop believing that they are their thoughts and their visual imagery and maybe a bit of the senses. They stop thinking that they are that and
Mhm.
start to think that they are this like pure awareness thing,
Okay.
which is what we are, I think. I think that's true. So I've been practicing with that in the last couple of days. So when you're in that, the awareness of everything that's happening that isn't the mind, so feelings or the thoughts too, actually, you can kind of be aware of much more of it, what feels like simultaneously. But I think it's just that that part of awareness is actually super fast. Um, and whereas the mind is painfully slow compared to the super fast awareness part of the mind, which kind of explains people who say they don't even remember putting their foot on the pedal to brake when they saw a child in the road. They didn't even see the child. This is a common story. If a child runs out in front of the car, the foot's on the brake well before the conscious mind is aware that the child is even on the road. And so I think that shows the difference in speed between,
Mm.
I don't know, the reptilian brain, the danger brain that has to be lightning fast compared to the conscious mind that sits there going, oh, look, there's a child. I should probably put my foot on the brake. So in that context, that is where I've most recently experienced a much faster frame rate, if you like, of awareness.
So just to, I'm thinking of it in terms of, so Hurlbut, who's the researcher at Las Vegas University, who we talked about a few times before on the podcast, who studies, like, samples people's minds in normal everyday life and get a feel for what they are. And he has different kinds of thinking categorized from that. And you're talking about, you let imagery, you're not paying attention to imagery, you're not paying attention to inner voice. But it sounds like you might still be paying attention to senses, or not. They're sort of ambiently there, maybe, but not detail. Or
yes, well, in no, there's detail as well. But yeah, in The Power of Now, like, the question is, how do I access that awareness? And so he says to, like, be like, go and look at the body, be rooted in the body, which is the senses. So it'll be, you know, the touch, it'll be skin and proprioception and visual, actual imagery rather than mind imagery, and sound.
So would you feel like emotion and metacognition stuff as well in that state? Or
yes, because emotions are either a thought or they're a sensation in the body, and typically they're tightly connected, both. So sometimes a thought causes an emotion to arise, sometimes an emotion sort of comes out of nowhere and a thought comes and starts talking about it, and sometimes amplifies it. Actually, you can keep yourself in an emotion by having continuous thoughts about the emotion for a long time.
If that thought is words, then you're no longer, you're kind of then back into not being in now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say probably emotion. But what's weird for me is this is a first step that I've been attempting to make habitual for a long time. But I've also, like, got a few things have kind of disappeared. So what I find hard for me now is, like, well, the awareness, the bare awareness, if you don't even pay attention to senses, right, which is content, as they sometimes call it, what is that? Well, the answer is nothing. Like, or rather, like, there is not a thing you can call what that is. It feels to me more like a sort of empty, and I'm going to use one of the really contentious Buddhist phrases. It's an empty space, ready and, you know, constantly filled with content, but it itself is quite hard to define or talk about. It's more like the space inside of the cup than it is the cup, but, like, the space is obviously continuous with the outside of the cup also. So, like, a space isn't a thing. Anyway, so I find it quite hard to identify with that because it isn't a thing. But anyway, I've been trying to force myself these last few days because it's like I keep accidentally re-identifying with thoughts, and it's like, oh my god, I've got to get out of this. I've got to habitually go somewhere else at least. Then I can, like, defabricate that as well, like, once I'm more secure. But yeah, like, I walk around with the sense that even grounding in the body is actually, you're just focusing on content. The sensory realm is also just content. So what is it that can sense all of this stuff? You know, who am I, or what is this? So people could progress from this first stage, which is sometimes called the I am stage, because all you can say about it is just like, well, I am, in brackets, I don't know, capable of awareness. And all of the content is not me, because that comes and goes, as the Buddha says. You know, thoughts come and go, sounds come and go, emotions come and go, body feel comes and goes, twinges in the back, you know, it all comes and goes. And yet there is something that is capable of sensing all of that, which kind of doesn't come and go. It's kind of always there. And that's, people point at this sometimes when they say, like, oh, like, you know, what is it that doesn't come and go? And I thought that the answer was there isn't anything that doesn't come and go. But actually there is a kind of continuous sense of awareness, which, honestly, you know, jumping to the end, I think you defabricate that as well. But anyway, there is.
So is that similar? So I don't know, like, I don't have mental imagery, and other people don't have an inner voice, and some people don't feel emotion. And if you go through every single one of the common modalities of thought, there is a person that I know that never has that.
Yeah.
And people have been, some of the people Hurlbut sampled have, like, hardly any of them. And it feels like you can just sort of let all of those things disappear, and there's still some kind of there's still a kind of a thing I do know that gets left, which is like an ambient sense of presence that isn't specifically attending to particular senses or pretending,
Right.
but just that it's a I exist sense, I guess, and the world exists. But it's that feels like maybe that's a low level of all of the others rather than actually getting rid of them, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either because I probably need to meditate more. But I do know that a lot of people who don't have any of those, they actually are feeling. They're feeling in their body, or they cognizing with their physical body actually, and they're just not really aware. But I think that I do it, and it's surrounded by the gut actually, or it's like a mixture of maybe proprioception and yeah, like stomach feel, and that actually there's something fairly strong going on there. And I was speaking with a meditation teacher, and he was like, "Yeah, I think basically those people that don't have an inner monologue or a visual imagery are probably cognizing with their bodies, and so it's a feel, so it's the other, one of the senses. But yeah, if you even got below that, like what would you be left with? And I think the secret answer is actually that isn't a thing. That sense of aliveness also can be defabricated, and that's when you really start falling down the rabbit hole. I think like your infinity falling is what you kind of get left with for a bit, because the body mind is like no. um, Apparently the trick is to think of it as floating, and you'll be all right because
Interesting.
you'll never hit the ground.
And what stage are you at? Floating stage?
Well, I'm really trying to just abide, yeah, in that sense of I exist, as an alternative to I am my thoughts. Um, and I think I've done it before without realizing that's what I was supposed to be doing. And now I'm trying to just turn that into a habit. And I want that to be my default state before I then defabricate that.
Right.
um, yeah,
Because this defabrication keeps on going for a long time. I mean, I've read Daniel Ingram's book,
right.
and there's a lot of it feels like there's a lot of richness to how long you can do that.
Yes, yeah, apparently forever. And it is, I think you're de-identifying with it as well, right? Because eventually you realize that the content is the feeling of I exist. Like they arise together. So there's not actually a separate awareness that is experiencing content. I think you realize that awareness arises with the content, but then it like goes again. And so awareness is almost always pegged on something. But if you go into the higher jhanas, you can, for example, you can experience how like you don't actually have to peg on anything, and then it's as if you don't even exist. Um, so you can go all the way down there, but yeah, apparently there's always like little slivers of bits and bobs happening. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not there yet at all. I'm still trying to habitualize the I'm not my thoughts thing. But in another way, like I think when I'm present, I'm not identified with anything, like not the body, not sounds, not the mind. So it's like, well, how long before I just kind of give up and start floating? I don't know. It might click.
Yeah. How much of meditation would you say is basically exploring phenomenology and kind
Oh, I
of
mean, 90% at least.
yeah.
Well, because it depends. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all phenomenology, and then there's one of my questions is, can you verify the metacognition as being yourself? And I think that you can, and so that's a trap as well. But anyway, the metacognition starts to make you feel like that's what you are. Yeah, so there's two things. So there's the phenomenology. I think to the point of all the phenomenology exploration is so that you disidentify from it. That's it.
Yeah.
And you have to realize the truths that the Buddha says, the impermanence of everything, the no selfiness or no inherent essence-ness of everything, and the dissatisfaction of everything, so that you stop thinking that any of it is relevant. And so that you disidentify with all of it. And I think some people really love to see the inner workings of the machine and realize that it's all a trick, and that's what wakes them up. And I think others, I mean, for me, I feel like I would have been obsessed with content my whole life if I hadn't had teachings. I would have been thoroughly bought in to the content. I would not really have been like, oh, I'm allowed to identify as the space around all of the content or some other mysterious thing that is experiencing the content. I would never have made that move, or maybe after many years. I think I just love to identify with stuff. So for me, it's the identification where it's like, oh, this is me, this is me. I've got a really strong sense of what me is.
Mm.
That's
It's
quite hard to
fascinating that
dislodge. Yeah.
different people are clinging on to different bits of that in different amounts.
Right,
And
right.
the kind of thing they have to let go of to attend to the space is different
Yes.
according to the person. And it's sort of interesting. It's almost like if you joined everyone together, they all know part of it isn't there, kind of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that would be lovely. If we could all just be telepathic and just like, connect to some very long-lived Zen master, we could all just be like, oh, boof, gone.
Oh, you don't do that all the time. Like, first talking to someone who's anxious all the time and going, "Oh my goodness, you experience anxiety all the time." Basically, I experience it like once a
Right.
year, and I'm like, that's completely different. And similarly, I don't remember faces suddenly or something. All these things are kind of yeah.
Yeah. It would be beautiful if we could jump in each other's bodies. I think it would probably only take 7 or 8, maybe 10, and everything would be gone. Someone would be absent of enough
Yeah,
phenomena.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like, we're all kind of on some cliff face clinging onto different things. And then
Mm.
actually,
Yeah.
if we let go, we're floating somehow.
Yeah. And thank goodness there's so many meditation practices. But
Yeah,
this meta truth might finally be available via the internet now. It's like, wait, we're all clinging on to different things. Like, do some general stuff so that at least you're aware of what's going on in your own mind, like frame by frame if you can, or at least quarter of a second by quarter of a second. Notice it all and notice which bits you're clinging to. Yeah. And then do the practice that might help unseat that specifically rather than trying to unseat something that you wouldn't even cling to in the first place. Yeah.
yeah. So is there a difference between, I mean, no one knows what we don't, I'm not, no, is there a difference between enlightenment and just being really aware of your phenomenology and fully understanding it in complete depth? Um,
Well, and disidentifying from it.
right. It's almost getting
Yeah.
rid of it, isn't it? And not having the
Yeah,
phenomenology not
almost.
being the center, because
Yeah.
almost the word puts attending to the content as being the thing that we are, doesn't it? It's like
Mhm.
goes, what are we attending to as content right now? That's what are you experiencing right now?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's definitely the two step there, I think. It's like being aware of what it is, which is quite a tough step for many people. Um, and then not believing that that's what you are. Yeah, that's the two. Um, and then you get a lovely paradox come in where like because you're in a way getting rid of it, it then comes in Technicolor. It's actually because it's liberated, it's all allowed and it's all coming and going in this amazing, you know, thing. And because you're not, if you're identified with it, you're gonna like cling to some things and try and push away other things. So you're gonna mind hole some of it and just be like, that's not allowed, that's not allowed, that's not allowed. So you might feel like you're losing something, or the way we're speaking right now, you might feel like you're trying to become a completely dissociated, sensory deprivation tank person, but that's actually not the case. It's that you're just not attached to all the things, or pushing all the things, or ignoring all the things because you're just like, well, that's boring. Which again is very Buddhist, but still. So, but by releasing that grip, it's actually all allowed and it's all available and it all comes in and it can be as like, close to your face as it really is. And yeah, one of my favorite teachers always emphasizes the lack of separation. Like we think that there's some sort of separation between us and all of this phenomenological experience that we've just spoken about, and there isn't. It's all intimately connected and undivided, and apparently that's very peaceful and relaxing. and like joyful and life affirming and good, So yeah, I think they're right. I think they're right.
Yeah. With that,
Fantastic.
I think
Yeah,
that's a pretty good high note to end on.
agreed.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jess. That was
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
Enlightening. To say the least.
Yeah.
I'll probably get you to send links and ask you at some point when we edit it for things to put in show notes
Mhm.
that are relevant.
Sure,
Do you have
yeah.
anything you'd like to promote? We could always, add that into the.
Uh, well, those who know me, know that there's Jess. I'm Jess off camp.
You are
The one
indeed.
thing that I do that I might promote is indeed Jess Camp. It's just a gathering of people who love to talk about this stuff, and yeah, a lot, and be
Yeah.
together in physical space, so that we actually end up doing fun things like wrestling more when we're together. So there is going to be one this year. I'm still being coy because I need to check out the venue, but
Hmm.
yeah, come to Jess Camp. Buy a ticket, meet your friends, enjoy life.
Awesome.
It is really
So,
good. I literally went there and started talking about this stuff, and Vin was like, "Oh, this is really interesting," and we started talking about the cultural aspects rather than the individual aspects, and I was like,
oh,
"Oh, he's want to
beautiful.
start a podcast," and he goes, "Great, let's start a podcast." It's just
And then
very
imagine Apple's born just like that.
very yes and energy of
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I hope we can actually recapitulate the heights of Just Camp 2, which was a very special
Mm,
camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mm.
So Just
Great.
Camp 3 was different, but Just Camp 4 is gonna be good again, I think. It's gonna be chill.
Fingers crossed. Right.
Super. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Have
And
a beautiful rest of your day, everyone.
You too, guys.
bye.